Hey guys, welcome back. My name is Mr. Sokowski, Mr. Rust for short. Again, if you like my video, like and subscribe. It's important for the video channel to get it going. Blah blah blah. You heard it a billion times everywhere. Alright, so I'm doing an AP Euro crash course on vocab. You can get a link to this below. This is period 3, so hopefully I can make it quick. But remember, the way you do this vocab review is that it's not your studying per se, but it's just like your saving grace or your last like little bit of reassurance that if you don't know one of these concepts that I'm talking about, you need to go back and get into it a little bit more. And it's not for sure passing for 5, but this is something to give you a good review going forward. Okay? So, or alas, maybe saving grace. Hopefully not, but I'm here for you. So the idea of nationalism, this is important for ideas of DBQs and LEQs, and imperialism. Nationalism is linking people between culture, religion, heritage, and then you have imperialism, the taking over of European countries and how they can become basically increased through wealth by doing so. If you do the Industrial Revolution, you want to know the first Industrial Revolution, you want to know the textiles is the first thing that basically gets drastically changed by the industrial factory system that gets changed. That's a popular one. The Crystal Palace is basically the idea of exorbitant of technology, right? So it's something you want to know, not so much, but reality. You want to know that the idea of factory systems is important. Urbanization, people moving from the agricultural rural lands to the cities, that's urbanization. Monopolies is important. The idea of centralized power over one place by one person or one entity over a certain product is a monopoly. Canals, not so much Sulfurin, not so much Besserman. Besserman process is the idea of purifying iron is important. Electricity, chemicals speak for themselves. Steamship, internal combustion engine, that's something that basically steam engine and radio are all parts of the Industrial Revolution. If you know what they are, you might want to go brush up on them. Proletariat is basically the working class of a Marxist ideology. You want to know that word? It's the have-nots if you're talking about Marx. Bourgeoisie would be the upper middle class, which would be the haves of the Marxist society. Middle class is kind of like in the middle, obviously. Trade unions will be important for unionization. The idea of worker strikes and so forth will be the ideas going on there. Commercialization of agriculture, commerce, trading food. Nuclear family will be something later on, kind of coming into the 21st century with the adventation of nuclear power. The idea of after World War II be a word, a cult of domesticity or a domicile, meaning the idea of like the nuclear family will be something later on, maybe a word you want to know. Here, family, mass leisure, consumerism will be one of the 1950s and 60s. Factory Act of 1832 and Mines Act of 1842. And Irish potato famine. The Irish potato famine will be one of the ones you want to know really well going forward. Here, these are more important. Laissez-faire economics or laissez-faire is like a hands-off approach. Invisible hand, that's Adam Smith. Liberalism will be the idea of liberal ideologies that's created during the Enlightenment, but it's also applied to Adam Smith. Popular sovereignties, independence of certain areas or people. Individual rights would be something self-explanatory. Anti-corn laws would be the ideas of going on with the English Reform Act of 1832, so that'll be something you want to go into a little bit if you don't know. Female suffrage literally means female equality, okay, and the idea of righting to vote, which is equality in social aspects. Law League, no. Universal male suffrage is the same thing, but it's for men. Conservatism would be the idea of conservatist ideology, like the Metternich would be important to preserve or conserve the prior monarchies. Now, it's not conservatism today, modern day history. It'd be conserving traditional values from the 1800s before. So they're really trying to conserve monarchies, which don't really exist in our world today as much as they were back then. Chartists, people wanting to create charters. Socialism is very important. You want to know what socialism is, the idea of social equality, not social equality, the ideas of Marxist philosophies of production, trying to create it through a commonality of people and ownership. So socialism and communism are a little bit interchangeable in the sense, but the idea is one allows more of private ownership, which would be socialist ideologies, and communists don't. They want no private ownership. So these are kind of the way to kind of imply those. but they're really breaking down social classes in totality. So that's something you want to kind of get into. If you don't know what Marxism is, you really need to know Karl Marx. Okay, like you need to know Karl Marx and Adam Smith for economic philosophies. It's imperative. If you don't know what I'm talking about, please just go find out what I'm talking about. Adam Smith, Karl Marx. You gotta know it. Anarchists are people that don't want any government at all. Nationalism is the idea of fighting for one's nation, culture. This is different from monarchy, fighting for a king or noble. The Metternich is a ultimate conservative, so you want to know the Metternich. The Congress of Vienna after Napoleon is defeated in Waterloo would be the idea of the Metternich and conservative, taking a step really in that direction going forward. Anti-Semitism, self-explanatory. Zionist ideologies fighting a utopian city or place for Jewish people. So that would be the Zionist movement going on later on during World War I for the Jewish population. Government reforms, self-expanded. Robert Owen would be one of that being kind of important. Frederick Engels is super important. He's the one that co-authors the Communist Manifesto with Karl Marx. Again, he would be one that you want to know. Feminism is self-explanatory. Giuseppe Mazzini would be a nationalist movement to create a unification of Italy. You want to know him. Dreyfus Affair would be the ideas of anti-Semitism happening with the Dreyfus, which is a military officer of French, which was basically put through the ringer because he was Jewish. So that would be the epitome of anti-Semitism in Europe, in France, prior to what happens with the Jewish people during Adolf Hitler's reign, which is, the world knows this, that part. The Dreyfus Affair would be more of a European view of anti-Semitism prior to Hitler's rule. Economic liberalism would be the idea of laissez-faire economics. Thomas Malthus, the ideas of societies letting it go forward would be important. Jeremy Bentham would maybe something you want to go into if you don't want to know some more side details. And David Lloyd George would be the idea of British a prime minister during World War One. You have conservatism, you want to know that. Liberals, you want to know that. Socialist, you want to know what that is. German Socialist Democrats, or the Nazist Party later on. Temperance movement is basically the idea of, like, I guess you would say like prohibition, prior prohibition movements. Temperance to calm the tempers of people through alcoholic use was their idea of calming the tensions. British abolitionist movement was basically to abolish slavery, so that's something that's first. Later on comes America. So there's some of these ideas there, but the ones that I really speak out are there. I have some crash courses on each of those that are the most important going forward. Now, the concert of Europe is imperative, created out of the Congress of Vienna. The Congress of Vienna basically puts a stampede or puts a final kibosh on Napoleon Bonaparte, so it's important to know those. A Congress system was basically the ideas of the system that's created with Napoleon. Conservatism is super important to conserve again. The revolutions of 1848, these literally unleashed the ideas of nationalism, of nations creating themselves more of like a constitutional variations of European countries. So you want to know your British revolutions in 1848, the Corn Laws. You want to know the Greeks are super important of their establishment of their own country and how European nations really helped them fight against the Ottoman Turks. So those are the ideas that are basically leading to the revolutions of 1848. So modern day Europe looks like modern day Europe after the revolutions of 1848. Before this, it was more monarchies controlling these areas. The Crimean War is important for Russian history. It basically shows how backwards they are compared to fighting the Ottomans, and they get beat up by them. So you want to know that in Russian history. Italian unification, German unification, you want to know those two. Unification of France under Napoleon, or Louis Napoleon, was basically, he creates France's version of what you think of it as a modern day constitutionalist government with policy and democracy intertwined in the modern day version, which is after the Congress of Vienna, after Napoleon. Cavour would be for Italy, Bismarck would be for Germany. Those you really want to know those. You want to know the unification of Italy, you want to know the unification of Germany. Unification of Italy, Cavour. Unification of Germany, Bismarck, Otto von Bismarck. If you don't know Count Cavour and you don't know Otto von Bismarck, you need to go know those. Okay, those are super important. They do comparison and contrasting. They do LEQs. They do SAQs. They do multiple choice. So much so. Dual monarchy in Austria-Hungary, something that's important that's going on forward. Revolutions in 1905, the October Revolutions, the Bloody Sunday. That'd be something you want to know prior to the 1917 revolution in Russia, which is during World War One. A realpolitik will be the idea of realistic policies under Bismarck. You want to know that kind of terminology. Greek War of Independence would be the revolutions of 1848. Decembrist movement, a revolt will be something that happens during the Russian Revolution, or Russian's history, sorry. Revolution of Alexander II in Russia. You want to know your Alexander II. You want to know your Nicholas II. You want to know your Catherine the Great. You want to know your Peter the Great of Russian history. Those are your like four big dogs you want to know. Other than that, the ancient history of Russia goes deeper before AP Euro starts asking you questions about it. The Triple Alliance is prior to the ideas of World War One. Treaty of Congress of Berlin. This is basically the ideas of 1878. Bosnia crisis in 1908. Not as much. First and Second Balkan War will be for World War One, which is something you want to kind of allude to. The ideas of that it was kind of breaking out in World War issues in the Balkan Peninsula, which is lower than Russia. That area there. Prior to the World War One popping off with the assassination of Archduke Franz Ferdinand, which would be important. Here I have the Italian unification, Russian Revolution, Revolution of 1848 crash course. Those are super important to know. Now, the idea of imperialism is imperative. This is the idea of these European countries creating empires, imperialism empires over all parts of the world. Gandhi would be the one that basically comes out of the imperialistic ways of Britain over India, so he breaks away those chains. But he'd be someone that will be later on breaking that. Scientific realism, the idea of science and coming into the world of using reason to basically figure out the world. Machine gun would be a technology utilized in the age of imperialism, which gives the industrialized nations an advantage, a technological advantage over the places that they're encountering and taking over. They have better tools, technology, machine gun gives them an advantage over their military technology. Louis Pasteur, the idea of science. Romanticism would be an important one to know for work. It's artwork, which is some intertwined in AP Euro, which would be the idea of like usually like landscapes, I guess is the best way to say that. I have a review for AP Images, so if you don't know what I'm talking about, the reviews for art, that's a quick crash course on doing that. Darwin, social Darwinism would be implemented in imperialism, so taking over certain areas, so like I get to take over survival of the fittest, but of society, so social aspects of it. Materialism, consumerism, buying stuff. Scientific socialism will be the idea of Marxist ideologies applied to science, of taking over certain areas. Relativism, which is Sigmund Freud, Freud's subconscious. You want to know the idea of Freudian psychology. The id, the superego, is basically created during this time frame of fixing the mind just as much as the body. Here we have Einstein, quantum mechanics is a little bit important. Impressionist, post and prior impressionist, expressionist, cubism, romanticism, Dadaism. Those are the ones that you want to go into detail, knowing those as artistic movements in the later on half. Post-romanticism and post-baroque and rococo. So those are the major artwork that you want to know for AP Euro. I have the review for you on another channel, so on another video, so you want to look that one up if you don't know what I'm talking about. Those are some of the big ones you want to know. Berlin Conference of 1884, super important. That one right there. This one right here is super important because this is basically the division of the Africa by the European countries. They get together in Berlin, and while they're like, hey, let's take Africa, let's do it cordially, so we'll do a conference of how we're going to divide it up. That's the Berlin Conference. It's also called the Congo Conference sometimes too. Anti-imperialism in India, they try to break away with the Sepoy Rebellion, meaning the Sepoys were the Indian officers that were intertwined by the British, meaning they were forced to be part of their navy. So they tried to rebel. They were squashed. The Boxer Rebellion would be happening in China. You want to know what that is a little bit. Meiji Restoration would be in Japan. Mary Shelley, Charles Dickens, Dostoevsky, Nietzsche, which is like nihilism. Marie Curie, Monet, Matisse, Picasso, Van Gogh. Treaty of Nanking would be part of the Age of Imperialism and Opium Wars. Out of this, Berlin Conference, Sepoy Boxer Rebellion, Meiji Restoration would be the ideas of imperialism. A Treaty of Nanking and Opium Wars are critical for imperialism. These would be either the intellectual people of this time, either through literature, science like Marie Curie, or paintings like Monet or Picasso. So you want to know those artistic movements and those people, a little bit about each, but not too much. More about the ideas of imperialism and the artwork that goes along with it. Okay? The last video I'm going to be doing would be for period 4. So again, if you like these videos, like and subscribe. Hopefully this is useful for you. These are the things that say, I don't know what he's talking about. I should go look it up, right? And if you know what I'm talking about, and this is like before the AP exam, don't fret. You're good, and don't. No matter what happens, you guys are awesome. Okay, so don't let a test ever get you down. Like I tell my students, like it's just it's one thing. It's not your life. I mean, it feels like it's your life now, but remember, you're not a number. You're not a score. You are a person, and for even learning anything this year, you're doing great. Okay, so have a good day, guys.